I want to talk to you today about pensions. I'm Jon Skewes. I'm the Director of Employment Relations and Development at the Royal College of Midwives, and I know that the threat to our members' pensions is something which is really uppermost in people's minds at the moment. There's been a lot of coverage in the media about the strikes that are going to take place by the PCS, Civil Service Union, and two teacher unions this week in regard to the threat to their own pension schemes. And you will have also seen, no doubt on the news and from briefings that we've sent out, that there are central negotiations with the government across all public sector schemes, so not just the NHS one, but teachers, civil service, civil servants, police, fire, and so on. And those negotiations are taking place about the principles which should underpin any negotiations on the scheme-specific reform. So, what should happen about the NHS scheme and all of the other schemes? And the principles that we're trying to achieve there are that there will be negotiation and that there will be proper evaluation of the schemes, and that any reform should flow from there and should not be imposed simply to make up holes in the government's deficits, public spending deficits. The real threats that are coming are, I think, threefold. Firstly, that people are going to have to work longer before receiving their full pensions, and normal retirement age will be increased up to 66 and then to 68, and similar things are happening with the state pension as well. Secondly, there's a move to change the nature of the schemes from final salary to something called career average. Would not be beneficial for most midwives. And then also that the value of the pensions in payment, once you receive that pension, should be uprated by something called the Consumer Prices Index, as opposed to the Retail Prices Index, which is currently used. Consumer Prices Index is on trend well below the RPI most of the time. So really there's a kind of a reduction in how much people would expect to get from their pension, that they would have to get it later, and that the very nature of the scheme changes from its current basis of final salary. On top of that, the government are also saying that they want to put up the contributions that members make to the scheme. At the present time, they're saying that would go up by 3.2%, which is a huge increase over the next 3 years or so. And all of those things together, taken with really what may well be something like a 15% real drop in earnings for most people in the public sector because of the current level of RPI and the fact that pay isn't going up and so on, and that taxes are increasing at the same time, that really there's a squeeze on people's earnings, and this change to pensions makes that even worse in the short term because of those contribution hikes. So the central negotiations are taking place at the moment, and this evening I, together with Cathy Warwick, our General Secretary, will be meeting with all of the other health unions to coordinate our approach to this. We hope that those central negotiations will come up with sensible principles to underpin the negotiations that are going to be taking place in the health scheme itself. If they don't come up with sensible principles, then I think we are looking at the threat of collective action by unions in the health service and elsewhere in the autumn, and certainly the RCM is looking at how it makes preparations for that should it be necessary. It would be the first time in our history that we had balloted our members on such collective action, and of course if we did need to take that, then it would be subject to, I think, a lot of consultation about the nature of such action, but also of course a ballot of members, and it would require a majority. We'd also just like to say that if that was the case, we would be designing such action so that it was hugely protective of women and their families, and designed to actually achieve maximum public support for midwives. And so it's likely to be demonstrative action, it's likely to be action which actually puts at hazard the finances of the NHS and its reporting mechanisms and so on. So further details of that will be available in due course. But what I would hope is that we will actually be able to get down to sensible negotiations, as we've done before in revising the NHS scheme. After all, we revised it about 3 years ago, and we've ensured that the taxpayer's contribution to that scheme is limited to no more than 14% in the future. And in fact, that the risk of higher contributions, should the valuation show that there will be a shortfall, would fall on the staff of the NHS. So we've already reviewed the scheme, we've already revised the scheme very, very recently, and you will all have been part of a choice exercise between two available parts of the NHS scheme which you could join. Actually, what we think would really not be sensible with the government to rip up all of that. The NHS scheme is rather different from civil service and from teachers and so on. We don't think it would be sensible for the government to rip up all of that progress that's been made, but we do understand that there are pressures on schemes. We understand that people are living longer, and we've always been willing to negotiate and to talk about how the scheme might be reviewed to match those additional costs. That doesn't, however, mean that we would find acceptable the broad package that's being proposed at the moment. So just working longer, for less, and with higher contributions is, in our view, not acceptable. And the government really does need to see sense on that, and it needs to negotiate with us in partnership, and it needs to come up with a sensible solution to this. The alternative to that, I think, is for considerable disruption in the NHS and the public sector in the next few months otherwise. The RCM will be keeping all of our members really up to date on this issue over the summer and into the autumn, and it may well be that there will be consultation exercises that we ask you to participate in. We know that our members are really angry about the threat to their pensions, and they're really apprehensive about the threat to pensions. What I ask you to do, however, is to await the outcome of those negotiations centrally, which we're having a big input into, and I would hope that they are going to be successful. I cannot, however, predict that. If they're not successful, then we have to put pressure on government to stop it taking your money away and reducing your living standards even further now and into retirement. Thank you very much.